What's up, everybody? Episode 52 of two FMA-Nerds talk about stuff. So today I brought on Dieter Knuettel. He is one of the Datus underneath the late Professor Remy Presas, the founder of Modern Arnis, and probably one of the most influential Filipino martial artists in the modern era. If you don't know who he is, well, Dieter is going to tell you his version of the story and through his lens and his involvement with the late professor since the 80s. So, as with that, DatuDieter is one of the OGs of the FMA community, and he's been one of the strongest proponents for Filipino martial arts, or the strongest proponent of Filipino martial arts there in Germany, of all places. So yeah, great conversation. Had a fun time just sitting there shooting the shit with him. He's got such a wealth of knowledge and great stories. Plus, he's done so much work in the FMA community on his own right, especially with the production of high quality instructional videos. His company, Abanico, in particular, is specific to that. We'll talk more about that later in a follow-on episode. This episode was more of a standalone. Let's get to know the Datu. And yeah, like I said, he'll be on here in a later episode. But in the meantime, sit back, hang out, like, subscribe, do all the marketing stuff for me because I'm terrible at it. And yeah, let's get into this. Enjoy. DatuDieter, how are you doing today, sir?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I had a little mic and phone problems or
no worries.
Problems. What? No. We are now. Cheers. Some water.
Excellent. Well, Datu, while I continue to share this out to the rest of the FMA universe, let's go over the plan for today. For one, my intention is to do a biography. Then, of course, your time spent in the FMA community, and we'll just kind of go from there. But I'm going to drop down a little bit and just have you tell us the story of who you are, where you come from, and all the things that you've done.
Oh, how much time I've got?
I mean, we got as much time as you want. I mean, it's later on your end than it is for mine, but I'm going to pop myself a little.
So I'm from Germany. I started martial arts in 1966. With judo in the mid-70s, I entered into the striking arts, karate, taekwondo, kung fu, and stuff like that. And in 1978, I got in contact with the FMA. First through Jackson Brocker, who was a student of Ernesto and Roberto Presas. Actually, he was also the first instructor of Datu Warden, which is quite funny. I trained there several years, and in 1983, I decided to go to the Philippines for 3 months, train there, meet masters, meet grandmasters, and see what's going on there. So I met a lot of people like Grandmaster Ernesto and Roberto Presas, Rene Tongson, Bambi Dulai, Roland Dantes, the Cañete brothers, and many more that might not be so famous right now. But for me, it was quite impressive. I was a 22-year-old lad when I was over there. So and then when I came back in '84, I decided to stop all other arts that I was doing and to concentrate on the Filipino martial arts, on Modern Arnis, because I thought I might have a chance to build something, to create something, and to train with masters and grandmasters in a closer connection than I could if I would have continued with the karate or taekwondo or something like that. So we invited first for a few years Master Ernesto Presas on a regular basis. And in 1993, we ended working together with him, and we worked together with Grandmaster Remy Presas, who then came over on a regular basis, and I visited him in the States. I forgot that in 1985, we founded the German Arnis Association. I was elected chief instructor there. And that's a position that is on for elections every 3 years. So up to now, from 1985 till this year, I've always been re-elected from the members of our organization. We are all over Germany, and we have connections in other countries as well. I've taught in the last 30, 40 years, I've taught about 1,000 weekend seminars in roughly 20 different countries, from Russia to Canada, from Norway to the Philippines, Israel, So I've been a little bit around, and I enjoy what I do, and people seem to like what I do. And in 1991 or 90, I started, I studied sports science from 1983 till 89. And I finished with a thesis about Arnis. So I'm Master of Arts in Physical Education or Sports Science. The thesis was an instructional video as well, and some more, and that gave me the idea to start an instructional video company here in Germany, Abanico, that is called. And we started with VHS, later DVD, later download or streaming, and now as a streaming service with Abanico Academy. So there's a development there also there. So that's a brief history. We've got about 1,800 or 2,000 members here in Germany with 70 or 80 different clubs. I personally examined about more than 500 students of mine for black belt, and at the moment we have black belts from first degree up to 8th degree. And in 2016, I received from Ernesto, from Roberto Presas, the last living Presas brother, Lakansampu 10th degree in Modern Arnis. So I'm not fighting for degrees anymore or for titles. I'm done with that.
Well, like you said, that's a short history, but man, that's a lot to cover. So I guess one of the things we could explore in this conversation, I'm still trying to process all that information, is one, we've done the history of Modern Arnis to death on the show, but the thing that the widespread influence that Modern Arnis had, it's we can't really gauge necessarily, but I'm really curious as to Germany and martial arts, because as I understand it, Germany has a very strong martial arts community, both in Krav Maga, Modern Arnis, PTK, all these things. I'm really curious culturally why Germany or the German people have really embraced martial arts overall. I know there's a strong tradition of, obviously, with fencing and German longsword and Messer on the European side, but when it comes to foreign martial arts, I understand there's a big community for it. I'm just curious as to why you believe that is the case.
I think it's everywhere the same. I mean, there was the big craze of Bruce Lee in the 70s, who sort of started a big movement. That before Bruce Lee, there was there was karate, there was taekwondo, there was judo, jiu-jitsu, but from there on, it really went off. And it's I think it's in the States or in other countries it's the same. Even in the Philippines, it's the same. Arts, something that's coming from outside is more interesting than from the inside. So a foreign art is potentially more interesting maybe than a local art. But the arts that you mentioned are rather small ones here in Germany, like Arnis or DatuDieter or even Krav Maga. The big ones are karate or taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, who have hundreds and thousands of members. That's numbers we're dreaming of, or fearing it. Depends where you see how you say it, right? But I think here it's also in America. It's very much martial arts is very much a kid sport. It's in schools, and I think we have a little bit more that also adults carry it through decades. I have students. My oldest student started with me in 1979, I think. So he's since 46 years now. He's my student. And there are many who are 35 years or 30 years with me. Commercial schools also rely heavily on kids, no doubt. But I think the amount of adults that do martial arts here, do it more serious, is perhaps a little larger than it has been in the recent decades, because I think it has been different in the 80s or in the 90s in the States.
Yeah, it's really interesting because another community that I didn't mention is actually the Balintawak community, because I'm underneath GM Bobby Tabuado with the Balintawak community. So like we have Guru Michael Neitz there as well as his community, and yeah, it's really interesting that you have German practitioners studying foreign arts and seeing this explosion of it. And this is it's corollary to the Filipino martial arts, where you have a lot of Filipinos that have trained many other things, but they don't train their
Taekwondo is the most popular martial art in the Philippines.
Exactly.
And the most popular sports is basketball.
Yep.
So call it a Filipino art.
Yeah. And it's great cardio. I mean, if you look at Manny Pacquiao and know his training camp, he uses basketball as his primary cardio base. So yeah, I can definitely see the corollary. Like you said, it's interesting where the discovery of an indigenous martial art, people tend to do the things that they're external, but don't look internal to what their history is there and available. So I just always find that interesting with non-Americans, or just in general with people who don't have who study FMA but also have a martial art of their own.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, you've your indigenous people, if you've got tomahawk fighting and knife fighting, so it's there as well,
yeah.
Right? Bow and arrow, spear. So I think just the foreign stuff seems to be appealing, and I don't really put much value or think it's very important. Now Germans do a lot of martial arts,
Yeah.
France martial arts is very, very big, and in Spain too. So yeah, it's not only in Germany.
Yeah, I agree. The other fun one too is I tend to favor more European sword work than I do Filipino sword work, just for my own case, because I do enjoy playing with a German Messer. I do enjoy playing with a German longsword, and I tend to have a little more insight when it comes to blade fighting, as my interpretation of these two weapons through a lens of FMA. And I tend to find things that some stuff just doesn't work because the tool itself lends to specific characteristics, and therefore the technique and the strategies are particular to said tool. And it's interesting.
Well, 50 student of mine, he's very heavily also into HEMA, historical European martial arts. So yeah, it is quite interesting, reading the old books, now and so on, and trying to figure out what they did and how they did, which is not easy because it's written in a very old German that very hard to understand. So it's a lot of interpretation and try and error too.
Yeah, well,
but sure, why not?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the overall, the why being enough as that it's fun. So diving back into the history of FMA and your short time involvement of it, in the early stages of Modern Arnis and its explosion throughout not just the US, but the world itself, could you explain the landscape of what FMA was in those early days, especially as GM Remy was going through Europe?
Well, in the 70s, it was hardly there. There were two groups, the Latosa Eskrima, which went through the Wing Chun group of Kanspect, and later on, a little later, Kui Broca came. There was one guy from Balintawak. He's been in the Philippines, but he was only in police work, I think, at that time. We started in the Latosa was exclusively to the Wing Chun circle. It was only taught there. We taught the Arnis first, the combat Arnis, later on the Modern Arnis on open seminars. Well, since very early in the 80s, I started also doing instructional videos about not only modern artists, but also other Filipino arts. And there were, of course, magazines where, I've been on 3 or 4 covers of magazines, and we had very often we had articles about history of Filipino martial technical series and so on. In the 90s, we had the editor of the magazine. He made Voodoo Galas, where he invited everybody, really. I mean, Chuck Norris was there, Bob Wall was there, Bill Wallace was there, Dominic Valera was there, the Shaolin monks were there, the Indian yogis were there. So they had sumos there, and Panchak Silat, and too much to count. But they were shows with between 8 and 15,000 spectators. Well, he had several martial art magazines, so he could make good advertising for it. And usually 6 or 8 weeks before the show, you make a press conference where you make advertisements for it so that the local press is aware of the event. And usually that was okay. There's the event. By the way, it's sold out already. So they were highly successful up to the early 2000s, and all of that, and of course then Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and the whole Jet Li, and later on only the Ip Man series, but that was much later. But that was normal culture, that you went to the martial arts movies and had a look and were inspired and motivated by that. And I think that really brought thousands, if not millions, to the martial arts.
Yeah, because my lens of perspective is generally is Western Hemisphere, United States and Canada, when it talks about the history of martial arts, and as it explodes from Asia and going westward or eastward, depending upon which direction. But it is always curious to hear the history of how martial arts travels through the region, and especially we don't often hear the story of it in Europe, at least not from an American or Canadian sense. So yeah, it's there's a lot of similarities, and obviously there's some differences there, and I wonder if there was a time delay necessarily between, like, obviously a lot of the FMA practitioners and original Grandmasters immigrated to the US, and I'm curious as to what generational changes from their instruction was between there and, say, in Europe.
Well, I think that was quite a more parallel development, because we had quite a lot of Japanese judo and karate instructors directly from Japan, not coming from the States. Same with Taekwondo. So they were provided directly from the home countries of the arts. So of course, American kickboxing and so on, that came over in the 80s, something like with Georg Bruckner, the Waco, and so on, from America, with the safety equipment from John Rhee and so on. That was, of course, heavily influenced from the States, no doubt about that. But the traditional, at least especially Japanese arts or Chinese arts also, I don't think there were so many instructors that made the tour from America to Europe to teach there. I don't really have the impression, but of course, I mean, Black Belt, Inside Kung Fu, and so on were also magazines that were sold here, that were read here, and that had their influence. Panther Productions, with their thousands of videos, had their influence here, because they were available, and they were bought, and the people looked at them. Yes, from that perspective, the States did have influence here. But directly, ninjutsu with Stephen Hayes, but that was a phase, right? It's not really big anymore, but at the moment it's Krav Maga that is big. Before it was Wing Chun that is big, and they left their traces, right? They're still here, right? But they have this hype, and they BJJ, right? It's also so for the Filipino martial arts. I was pretty much one of the pioneers here in Europe, with teaching, having learned in the Philippines, inviting Filipino masters from early 80s, and then traveling. Also, I've been especially in the 80s and early 90s. I've been to Scandinavia 2 or 3 times a year. And then I went to France, and I went to Russia in the 80s, in the 90s, 15 times or something like that. Ukraine and other students of mine and representatives of our association spread it to Hungary and Czech Republic and France and Austria and so on, of course. But of course, there were other people in Filipino martial arts. Daniel Santo is a very, very prominent figure that you definitely should not forget to mention, because he's left deep marks, roots in the history of Filipino martial arts. We always say he forgot more than we will ever learn. And he's a walking history, and with I think he's 86 now, and he still moves very graciously and teaches, and it's quite impressive, right? But then also people like Ray Ronaldo later on, and Bobby Taboada and so on, left, of course, their marks. But Remy was definitely a pioneer in that regard, that he actually started what's now known as the seminar circuit. That was not known before. In the mid-70s, he came to the States, and purposely he did not want to have a dojo, because he did not want to be at one place, but he wanted to share his art by traveling around, trying to touch as many people as possible. And he found that doing that through seminars and camps, in beginning 2-week camps, later 1-week camps, later shortened to 3 or 4 day camps. He found that was the better way, that he traveled around and through his art within the art motto, he was able to incorporate people from other styles and not chase them away. Because if you say, well, I've got a great style, it's better than yours, try it, then you will not feel good sending your students there. But if you say, oh, I've got a style that makes you understand your style better and makes your style more complete, so he encompassed, you say that, so that the heads of the systems or the head of the schools went to the seminars, and when that happens, of course, the students follow. So that was quite a genius move to get people interested in Filipino martial arts and in Arnis. From that aspect. From another aspect, I think it was a little difficult, because you have a hard time to establish an art for itself. So this with the art within your art is great to get people, and that was his main purpose. But people think, oh, it's only an extension. It's karate with sticks. It's kempo with sticks. It's not so much establishing modern arnis as modern arnis as an art, as valuable and as good as other martial arts, and that's what we try to do here in Germany with the DAV. So it has its benefits, but it has also its flaws. For him, it was definitely the right decision to do it that way. And it was quite a great slogan to bring people together and get people on the seminar, and not scaring them away with there's something new, and instructors saying, no, I don't want to lose my students to them.
Yeah,
and Remy, when I just want to say that he put me sort of a little bit on the landmark or on the map for the Americans by giving me the Datu title in 96, as a 4th person, because if you're black belt, you're only a number, but at that time there were only 4 Datus, and only in 99 there was number 5 and 6. So that through this, my name was known in the modern Arnis scene in the States, because they have, what is this German that suddenly is Datu under Remy, right? So he gave me a voice, not only a voice, but also a second first name.
So actually, that's a good segue into the title of Datu. Can you explain to my audience, because I have a number of audience that aren't FMA practitioners, aren't Modern Arnis practitioners, but just in the same for our overall education and for the sake of archiving. Can you explain what the title Datu means through the perspective of Modern Arnis and its impact on modern Filipino martial arts?
Well, we have to go a little bit further back, because the Datu is a traditional title in the Filipino society. The Datu is a chieftain underneath the Sultan. So it's a local chieftain. It's not the king, but he's sort of perhaps a city mayor or something like that, right? A head of the tribe. So from there, especially in the southern area, Mindanao in the Philippines, it's still used. And in the beginning, Datu Kelly Warden had a lot of problems being the first white Datu in, I think, 86, something with 84. I'm not quite sure about that. That people, Filipinos say, you're not a Datu. How can you be a Datu? Only the Mahalikas, that's the kings of the old Filipino culture in the 17th century, perhaps, they would be qualified to hand out Datus. And Remy might have been qualified to be a Datu, but he doesn't have the right to give out Datu titles. For us who received it, we have nothing to do with that, right? We got to that title like a virgin to a baby, right? Remy said, "Hey, you're a Datu now," and we said, "Okay, thank you. What is it?" So we, for us, have defined it in the way that we say, I'm not a Datu in the Filipino society. I'm a chieftain of the Modern Arnis tribe in Germany. So we are a Datu within the Modern Arnis system. And when you have a look at Kelly Warden with this Natural Spirit Incorporated, and also others who have their tribes, he made people Datus that showed leadership, that had their tribes, that had their followers. And when I got the Datu title, I asked him, "What is it?" And he said, "Well, you're one of the 10 now." I said, "What is one of the 10?" He said, "Yeah, that's one of the 10s that I will choose my successor from." All right. Didn't give much to it, because that was in 96. He was strong, he was healthy, and so on and so forth. And this whole thing of who's the successor, it's long history. We're not fighting for that anymore. At least the people that have a little sense. We respect each other for who we are, no matter what title, what rank he gave us. When you're still on the mat today, and you're willing to work together, we are best friends, and no matter what title. So there is nothing like that, because he only within I think the first title was in Shishi Nakaya in 1982 till 1999. He only gave out 6 titles, 6 times. And when he was sick, he had about 6-7 months, or the last 2-3 months, perhaps not, but before he was sick, he had the chance to name other people as Datu, but he didn't. So I don't know why. He made other titles. He gave out a senior master to Dan Anderson. He gave out master of Tapi Tapi to other people. He gave out 8 degrees. He had his kids who was teaching, and he was typically Asian in not giving any clue how each are in relation to the other. So he didn't say, "Oh, senior master is higher than that, Datu is lower than that, or higher," or no. Didn't. He just get over the title and then deal with it. So we had to fight our way out of this mess a little bit. And I think for most of us, we did quite well in the regard that like Kelly Warden or the Dan Anderson or Brian Zawolinsky or myself or some others are really, really good friends. Some people got a little bit carried away, trying to do their own thing. Well, if it makes them happy, fine. But we try to be a team that respects each other, and that was also one reason why I initiated in 2003 the foundation of a group, later on an association. We call it World Family of Modern Arnis, with the aim to join people with the same roots, but not dominates in somehow. Nobody is higher than the other. Nobody has the right to tell the other what to do, whom to examine, what's the examination program. It just says we have the root in the Presas, or first in the Remy Presas system, now in the Presas system of Ernesto, Remy, or Roberto, and we do the things, and we have the same stem, but now then we went into different branches, into different leaves, so we became a little different. But it's the same roots without anybody trying to be the king or the head of the system. That never occurred, never will be, or wouldn't have worked anyway. And Remy's shoes were too large for any of us anyway. And at that time already, I said, who's the successor of Remy? People will decide with their feet. That means have a look in 20 years. Who's still teaching seminars? To whom will people go? Those people are the successors, the heirs. Nobody is the heir. There never was, there never will be. We're all heirs, and we all do the work that he started to do, and we try to continue the work to spread the modern Arnis and his vision of a world art, that it's a household name. That was one of his visions. And I think in some areas we achieved it, and some not, but we're getting there, working on it.
Yeah, talking with Brian Zielinski with the world, not the world camp, the round table and the legacy camp is one of those great examples of explaining concurrent development of the various modern Arnis tribes, and also maintaining the legacy and adherence to the curriculum and helping it grow and propagate. But it's interesting about the heir versus heirs. The heir tends to imply like you are the absolute carbon copy of the curriculum. You're the absolute authority of the curriculum, which in a sense robs that individual the opportunity to grow and make it their own. And essentially they become a clone. And on top of all that, yes, they're preserving an art, but it makes it stagnant in a lot of ways. Now, preservation is a great thing. We should have that because of history. But the bigger question leads into is, what is pure modern Arnis? What is the purest curriculum? Because it's an ever evolving thing. So that's a fun place to explore.
First of all, the heir that's the head of the curriculum. There never was a curriculum with Remy, right? And by the way, I don't want to take anything away from people like Grandmaster Bruce Chu or Brian Frank or all the others that are still active that I'm just don't pop into my head now. So they are all doing valuable work, and I don't want to belittle them in any way by just Bailey, what's his name? Jeff Bailey, I think, Chad Bailey, and others, right, who really do the work. Okay. Yes. Well, even with Remy, you could not say what's original modern Arnis, because if you only take one skill of him that was exceptional, is to see something and to incorporate what he liked and to incorporate that into his system. So I've learned with Rodel Gorg, or with Ernesto and Roberto Presas and Cristina Vasquez, people that have trained with Remy in the 70s, 60s and 70s. So from there, we have roots in the very, very old modern Arnis system of Remy. And then I've trained with him in the 90s, which almost had nothing to do with each other. So he changed dramatically what he's teaching and how he's teaching. So not even himself would do pure modern Arnis in regards to 10 or 20 years ago. Remy was modern Arnis. So he innovated it. One of the big things that he told us and told everybody, make it your own. In that case, keeping something the way it was 20 years ago is contradicting the idea of making it your own and continuing his way of continuously adapting and changing to the needs that I as instructor or other people as instructor have. And of course, it's nice to see how he did it and what he did and so on and so forth. But for my teaching, for example, I've got also the academic background in sports science, it's even more important is the biomechanic correct. Is the economy of motion correct? Do I work the way that the body is functionally correct? And if Remy or Ernesto or Bobby Taboada, whoever does it that way too, it's fine. But if I think I have to push away with palm out because that's what the tricep works best, and when I pull in, I have to bring the palm in because the biceps work best. That's what I'm doing, and I sometimes don't even know what my masters did, because for me this functionality is a little bit more important than the historical part, how somebody might have done it 20, 30, 40 years ago. That's, by the way, how many of the karate people got their knee injuries from, because they trained in a way how it has been, and the cartridges out the window, because they didn't train a functional way, but just a tough way. So in the modern way of teaching, you look how are the foot knee alignments, and don't try not to train against the body because you only have one, right?
I think, I mean, one of the problems when it comes to an individual copying the progenitor's movements and being a slave to that curriculum is this issue, like they don't put into perspective, or just the acceptance that one of the reasons why the original practitioner, the progenitor, may have moved that way is because they're adapting to physical limitations, either by injury or just overall physical limitations, and thereby everybody tries to repeat that movement because that's what they saw, but without the understanding of what is the reasons why they did that, and also in conflict, like you said, with proper biomechanics. Because the way I define good technique is really just efficient and effective biomechanics.
Yeah, and you said something good, and I forgot it.
Was it probably like the adaptation, or just the fact that people try to mirror what the
the Asian way of teaching is do it and you find out. Do it 10,000 times, you find out. If you don't find out, you're never going to be good. And the Western way is explaining why and how. It's a totally different way of explaining things. Now I got what I want to say. You say people copy the master. Let's have a look at Bruce Lee. People do the Jeet Kune Do that he did in the end. Fine. But the rigorous, do you call it rigorous, physical training that he did, that enabled him to do the things he could pull off because of this training, that mirrors in the things that he could do in the end. And now we want to do the end product, but we don't have this progress. Same with Remy. Remy was fighting the hell of the people. He tried a system with many different full contact fights, and that's how he refined the system. That's why he did certain things. Then he changed the perspective and didn't want to have a fighting system anymore, but more an education system, something that helps the people to get better persons, and not so much we hit each other with sticks. So there was a switch in why he did things, but we don't really know why he did a certain abanico, or what was certainly technique that he developed in the 60s or in the 70s, because one of his opponents might have done it this way. That's why he developed this counter. We only see the end result, right? And then you've got the problem of, I want to say problem, but when you teach in a school 2 or 3 times a week, it's totally different when you teach seminar style. Because in seminar style, in the end, it's not really nice, but you entertain the people. You want to do nice things, so you want to say, oh, look at this great thing, this great thing, and you very rarely work on the what I call bread and butter, right? You work on the cream and sugar and cherry, the cherry on the cake and on the flowering, beautiful things, right?
As Jim Bobby calls it, the Hollywood.
Yeah. But that you're in, you have got your mechanics, your basic striking, your timing, and so on. That's boring stuff. But it leads to the ability to do things and when you don't have that and then try to do the fancy stuff, you're missing some of the basic skills. And that's the problem with generally something that's only taught in seminars, right? I think Bobby has made a good way of doing that, having a progressive system, and that way he teaches also during the seminars that people bread and butter, no doubt about that. But in general, and I know that from my teaching, I've been teaching a lot of seminars. I want to have people that go home say, well, that was a great camp. We enjoyed ourselves. We learned something, right? So I try to balance it in having some of the basics, some of the fundamentals, but then of course also giving a little bit shishi, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're having a little technical issue on your laptop. Can you turn down the volume off of that, because there's an echo?
Is that an echo? Actually, I'm not. Oh, okay.
It's the speaker on your laptop. Whenever I talk, it comes through your laptop speakers.
Okay. That is funny.
In the end product, folks, this will be edited out, but this is just the joys of a live stream.
Okay, now the volume of
anyway, so going back to seminars and teaching the Hollywood, as GM Bobby says, because I'm also a student underneath GM Bobby, and the thing I love about his seminar approach is we're drilling for like the first hour, because I mean his seminars are typically all day, and so like the first several hours we are drilling fundamentals just to set the tone, set the foundation, and just this is what we're doing. And then he recently he's been having his FQIs leading a big block of instruction, showing the stuff that's unique to them, and then obviously at the end of the day he's doing all the fun Hollywood stuff. And as seminars go, I really love that approach, because again you have that foundation of what right looks like, and then we get to play afterwards. Because like I've been to many other seminars from many other systems, and it's all the Hollywood stuff, unless you're there for like a training camp.
And that's what I mean, that Grandmaster Bobby found a way to do that, and he changed Berlinter quite a bit. Berlinter used to be just linear, and he did all this bobbing, weaving, this boxing style, and evading to the side, and people love it. For a reason, he's great. He's good fun. He's a great entertainer. He's a super humble, very, very nice guy. And he's, I think, just about one of the absolute top 2 or 3 grandmasters in the world about FMA. There's nothing more to say. That's what made me so proud then when I taught together with him on a double impact seminar in Berlin. So he and me. And later on, I asked Michael Nitz, why did you invite me? And he told me GM Bobby requested him to invite me. And I said, well, this is like a knighthood from the Queen.
That's awesome.
Proud of that.
Yeah, GM Bobby is something else, as is Datu Kelly Warden, because I'm also a student underneath him. And with his camp, I call it a trainer camp, and his expectation, or what I view his expectation, is like we're just adding stuff on top, but even though we're having a connecting theme all the way around, so it's not so much, there is fundamentals, but it is the emphasis of make it your own, but we are elevating like the stuff that you're already doing. Because what I find is the majority of the instructors there are top tier in their field anyway, so it's that is really cool to see the end evolution of what, again, modern Arnis can be, of make it your own and work within the system that you already know, but still like improve upon it. One of the comments I've heard or I've used here recently when it comes to FMA is often like the duct tape of other martial arts, because you can tie so much stuff together with it.
Well, depending on which FMA, I mean, you've got the kicking and the Yaoyan, you've got the Dumok, the wrestling, you've got the knife, the hands. There can be everything. Most Filipino styles don't do everything. But that's sort of the jack of all trades and master of none. If you do everything, because then you would have to train 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, to be able to train in all these areas. So FMA is of course also a little specialized in the weapons, everyday tools, blade work, and some empty hand stuff. And while they also have some of the other stuff, of course, Taekwondo, for example, is the better kicking style, right? And BJJ or Judo and grappling is specialized more. And of course, there is more some styles that put emphasis on Dumok and are quite are good in that, no doubt about that. But in general, Filipinos have their niche with the weapons and so on.
Yeah, and again, back to the comment about GM Bobby and his transitions, adjusting Balintawak is again adapting to that very boxing, because I mean he was a boxer, and as a boxer, it translates the movement that I already know. So there's that proprioceptive understanding of body mechanics there that it translates really, really well. But it is also interesting where we find the complexity of FMA, where you're dealing with bilateral symmetry or complex individual limb tasking, where people who are just lacking the coordination struggle with that, as they do with any other activity or sport. But when it comes to Modern Arnis, some of the features that I've always attributed to it is the heavy emphasis on the double stick work of, I mean, it's a common platform to do Heaven 6 and Earth 6 in a Wally, but the things that I have found with where Modern Arnis really specializes, this is just my experience, is the complex weaving and using of double stick and just the Sin Wally structure in general. I may be incorrect, but that's just what I've observed over these several years.
Well, Remy wasn't really digging deep into the Sin Wally stuff. He was very deep in the single stick. He was very deep in the empty hands and the locking stuff. And he also did some knife. He also did some double sticks, but he's not really deep. Maybe I may be wrong too. But I thought that was, in my opinion, not his main thing. Also, Espadi Daga, right? He did some Espadi Daga, but it's definitely not one of his main topics. But through YouTube, the internet, the videos, also the one, not only, but also the ones I did, there is much more transparency between the styles. Before, in the Philippine tradition, I mean, you had your barangay or your little village or your island where you trained your style, and it was important to sort of keep your techniques to yourself, so that if somebody attacks you, they don't know what you do, so that you can defend yourself. And nowadays, and also in the 60s and the 70s, that's quite a funny part. The masters always are very, very angry were very angry if you went to other masters to learn. But when you have a look at the old masters, they all went to different masters to learn, right?
How dare you do what I did? Yes.
Sort of. But I can understand it. If you have a student and you teach him well and you bring him up, and that suddenly he goes to somebody else, you feel, well, ain't I good enough? And so, but once you're through a little experience, you learn to let go, because the more you let go, the more people come back. And the tighter you hold, in the beginning it works, and suddenly they break off, but then they don't come back. It's more like a rubber. Right, you let them go and they come back, and if you don't have a rubber, you tight, and then suddenly they break away because they are curious, they want to see other things. And when you say, yeah, if you go away, you don't have to come back. Okay, they go away, they don't come back. Yeah. So, but that takes a little personal experience to let them go with a good feeling. And I mean, I was very young when I started to teach. I was early 20s, and I had to learn that. What we all do. And nowadays, I mean, cross-train, if you don't cross-train, you don't do martial arts almost, right? Who does only one style nowadays?
There's some characters out there, but yes.
But it's very common to visit other styles, seminars of other styles, and so on, and to look over the rim of your plate to see what others are doing.
I mean, if you look at the core, as you've described, and many others have described about the history of Modern Arnis, again, your GM Remy built upon stuff that people was already doing, because there wasn't a pure foundation of FMA at his point. I mean, it was very, very small in certain cases, like with the Sarada community, and of course the Inosanto blend, and a little bit of PTK on the East Coast. But when it comes to the overall, people are already doing stuff, and then they were introduced to FMA, which is interesting. 30 years later, we run into this case where there is pure FMA schools, several of them throughout the world, or pure FMA federations that have prominence, and now they're starting from this point of like, this is what's pure to that specific system, and then they're coming, and then they want people to go cross train and then bring it back. It's funny how it goes in cycles like that.
Yeah, sometimes it's these waves, right? When it goes in and goes out. Again, one of those threads that fly around and then go away, and I didn't catch it. I had an idea what to say, but perhaps it comes back.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Well, let's go further back. So back into your history with martial arts in general. So what were the reasons why you got into your original martial arts, and why that particular martial art or martial arts?
Well, I started with judo, and in 1966 there was nothing else but judo in Germany. There was nothing else, and that had a little bit to do with we moved, and I had to move to another school, and I was actually 1.5 or 2 years too young for the class I was in. I was a little guy, so my parents put me into judo so that I could sort of not get bullied too much, and that worked. Later on, it was just the Bruce Lee thing, right? You saw the Bruce Lee, you wanted to kick, and you wanted to punch, and that's what you did. And then you looked around and went to the school that was closest to you, and that was nearest to what you were interested to do. Yeah, and then I found out that I've got a good talent for it. I could pick it up quite quickly. Yeah, in 10 years, after I started Arnis, for example, I found out that my last name Knüttel means the man with the stick.
That's awesome. It's one of those little bits of the universe. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to hear as to the reasons why people get into martial arts, and a big part of what this podcast is, for one, it's chronicling and archiving the history of martial arts and the people who make up, and also the history of it. But it's also as a sociological experiment or fact-finding mission that I have for my degree. I'm always curious as to like the traditions people get into as the reasons why they do martial arts, or how that ties into like the prominence of cultural traditions and institutions as to one, reclaiming culture, or preserving or inventing new culture. So it's always curious as to, again, why people do the stuff that they do and how that informs their current and where they're trying to go with it.
So what was the precise question there?
Oh, there wasn't a question. That was just a comment. So
okay, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. I just didn't know what to answer to that.
No, that it's just a general comment. So with that, with the balance between preservation, living in current, and then where Modern Arnis, or where your martial arts journey is going, what are some of the things that you find are holding Modern Arnis back, and what are the things that Modern Arnis or the community is doing really well today in 2025, and where would you like to see it move forward in the next 10-20 years? Three-part question.
Yeah, I can't really speak for other groups than ours. We, since the beginning of the foundation of our association in 1985, we had a program. We refined the program and so on and so forth. And we made it progress through it, and now since about 10 years we've got one that we were quite happy with. I think, and okay, from our program, just wanted to say that we have the approach that in the student levels, it's more how do you do things, what is right, what is wrong. In the black belt levels, you also have that, but it's more, also you have something like, that's the problem, solve it. Right, so get more tasks. And you learn in the student levels and sometimes in black belt levels. Well, you learn skills like tools, and then you're getting tasked. Now find the right tool to solve the problem, because if you're 6'5" and 250 pounds, or if you're 5'3" and weigh 110 pounds, your tools might be different, and your solutions might be different. So that's why I'm quite happy with our program, because once you went through the system through learning different skills and tools, then we try to make you apply them the way that it suits you, right? The problem with Arnis is that it is not unified, really. Let's talk specifically about Modern Arnis, and that's something where every American that I'm leader there, we've talked about that, and I just have a different opinion. I once had looked at 8th degree pictures of karate, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, kempo, or whatever, and you could always distinct them in what they were. And then you see 3 people in shorts and singlets or t-shirts or whatever. Okay, those were the 8th degree Arnis black belts. And I think if you want to make your art stand out for itself, you must give them an identity. And for us, uniform is a part of the identity. You would not go in shorts and a singlet to the taekwondo training. I mean, different taekwondo schools might have different uniforms, right? Fair enough. Sometimes white, black, or colored, or stars and stripes, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. But when you come in Germany, when you see the people with red pants and white shirts, you know, oh, those are the modern Arnis guys, right? So that's I think how you create an identity, or that it's a part of that, because that's when people sort of start to have the feeling we belong together. We belong to one tribe, right? And if you wear anything you like, that's very casual, that's very nice, and that's so practical and so on. But you don't create this unity feeling. Right? But I understand that's much easier, and I'm not trying to educate anybody that they should do it this way or that way. I just say what I feel about it and how we do it and why we do it. So if you see somebody with the sticks, you wouldn't really know what systems they are from. You couldn't say, are they Volentawak, or talking about people that never seen people with sticks, right? Like if you have never seen a car, then it means a Mercedes, BMW, or Chrysler, or a Pontiac all looks the same. It's 4 wheels, steering wheel, lights, brakes, all the same, right? And if you're a car guy, you say, oh no, there are so many differences. So if you're into martial arts, Filipino martial arts, you see so many differences in the different styles just by the way how somebody moves and how he strikes and how he blocks. But that's not what I'm talking about. If somebody doesn't really know martial arts and he sees somebody kick, oh, you know, he's probably taekwondo, something throw, he's judo, right? And sees, but also from the way they appear, right? Have a look at the, for example, taekwondo world group that's touring around doing break tests, you know, that do the triple flips and so on. Have a look. They don't run around any way they like. They all look the same. They have their uniform. They represent Taekwondo from Korea, right? So look, when you see somebody with a lot of advertising, you know that's a BJJ guy, right? So you see by the way they look what their styles are from, and I think that gives them an idea. You see just by the shoes if it's a boxer. They've got boxing shoes, right? So you see that, and that's a thing that the Filipinos are very No, the Filipino styles are very not caring much about that, which is fine. But Remy actually invented the uniforms in the Philippines. Not inventing. Dan Anderson wrote a very good book about history of modern Arnis from an American perspective, and he was diving deep into the history of Remy and what he did, and doing interviews with old people and reading articles and listening to audio tapes, whatever. And one very interesting thing is that the image of the Filipino martial arts in the 50s was, oh, those are the drunk people at the docks that fight and that break the bones, and the people are lying bleeding in the streets. Those are the honest guys. That was the image of honest. And he didn't want that. He wanted to change that. And that's why he saw that the image of the Japanese arts was good. It was educational. So they were in dojos, they had uniforms and so. So with introducing the modern Arnis uniform, which were red pants and white t-shirts, because the Katipunan fighters, the fighters for freedom fighters in the Philippines, wore red pants and white shirts. So that's a reference to the Filipino freedom fighters from the Katipunan. Through adaptation of a uniform, he wanted to get the image of the Japanese styles over to the Arnis as well, to show, okay, we have values, right? It's not only about breaking arms and then let the other bleed out. Right? So he purposely enforced and introduced uniforms in the Philippines. I understand that he didn't enforce it in the States because we had the thing, the art within your art. So you go to a Taekwondo school, you've got Taekwondo uniforms. You go to a Kempo school, you've got Kempo uniforms. You go to a karate school, karate uniforms. Jiu-Jitsu school, Jiu-Jitsu uniforms. And then tell them, oh, now you have to wear Arnis uniform. Again, gives this, what's this guy trying to do? So he lets them wear whatever they wanted to wear, give them their freedom, not to create problems, which is a very Asian way, evading problems, not going like this, but going around. Nothing against it, it's just a different way. That this way, by not enforcing the uniforms in the States, he had the people much easier connect to him. And that might be also the reason why nowadays in the States, they say, well, we don't need uniform. That's fine. We do it differently for reasons. And they do it also differently for their reasons. It's just, we just don't have the same reasons.
No, that makes a really great point about costuming, creating a sense of identity through unity. Yes. I'm a Army veteran, so uniformity is a big part of my background. I mean, with my own athletes and my students, I mean, we wore the red dot as black t-shirt with the red dot. So you recognize every time we went to stuff that like that is the LFS crew. So I'm fully on the same page about uniformity. What is interesting when it comes to the history of Filipino martial arts and just Filipino people in general is the constant evolution and adaptation by taking in foreign influences, because for one, I mean, the Philippines is an archipelago of over 7,000 islands, many different cultural ethnic groups, and so there's so many different influences throughout the century. So trying to find a uniformed Filipino culture pre-colonial that
doesn't exist.
It's impossible. It's literally impossible.
There was none. None.
So after the Spanish and obviously after the Americans, I mean, there is modern Filipino martial arts, modern Philippine culture as a nation state is less than 100 years old. So that's something that people need to pay attention to when it comes to the history of martial arts or in the Philippines and Filipino culture when it comes to that. So what is interesting, my conversations through this podcast, especially going through anthropological, social anthropology, because that's a big part of my degree, is this thing about returning to indigenous institutions, cultural customs, and practices. And FMA tends to be one of those vehicles to do that. But when it comes to this issue about uniforms, I mean, it's so you're splitting up between tribes from 400, 500 years ago. So there is no distinct ethnic uniform that in the attempt to decolonize. Yeah.
And if you go to old masters in the Philippines, they wear flip-flops and shorts and perhaps a shirt, maybe not, So I understand that people that say, "Ah, you and your costumes, you don't really do Filipino martial arts. Filipino martial arts is raw. It's not. You don't wear pajamas. I've heard that, right? But on the other hand, we are in a tradition of our master, of our grandmaster, who did that for a reason, who wanted to imply different things by this uniform, and I go along with these reasons. I understand that people say, "Nah, in the Philippines, when you're really fighting, you pick up a stick and you just go for it. You don't have time to wear a uniform and tie a belt." Yeah, got it, great.
I mean,
But
it's the
that's
dichotomy. It's the dichotomy of combat combat immediacy versus cultural development. So
yeah, it's nowadays. I mean, who trains nowadays? At least in Germany, I don't know in America, but who trains for street combat?
I mean, the combative
There are
community is huge in
okay,
America, so there
yeah,
is that.
but there are many people who just enjoy doing it. Yeah, and they are not on the brink of a street fight every evening. Sure, there are people, there are areas where that is necessary. I will not doubt it. But the necessity of being able to defend yourself in a cruel society where your village was raided by other villages continuously is quite higher than living in a suburb today and going to McDonald's. To be a little bit extreme, right? And sure, depending where you live, there is brutality. There's I don't deny that. Right? But usually, what people, at least here, and I can really mainly speak for Germany and for our students, which are totally different than, for example, for the Paris people. Totally different people who do it. So I only speak for my people. They usually come because they want to learn to defend themselves, and they stay because they enjoy it. They enjoy the community. They like what they're doing. They like the people, and it's not so much the I gotta kill, or I'm not kill. You know what I'm talking about, right? I gotta bring him down. That's sort of the beginning, but later on, the reason why they stay changes, and I think that's okay. And of course, that's also a mirror of how a style sees himself, right? If you say we are only going street fighting, and yeah, of course you don't wear a bolero and a belt. I understand that, no doubt. But if you do martial art and every other martial arts have this kind of thinking as well, then there is more than just there's a guy and I want to bring him down and I knock him out and then I walk away. There's the bowing and however you bow, and there's the etiquette, the rules that you do, and it's all this that is around the art. And if you're only in for I want to be effective in the streets, you don't really need an art. You need the martial part more than the art part. But the art part is the thing that keeps the people for decades training.
I agree. Again, it's the issue of combat sports, profession of arms, the utilization of the martial side of it. That stage and capability of an individual is very limited. There is a timestamp of which that expires. But art evolves. That's just where the why changes throughout time and history, or just time and perspective of the individual. They may have got into it because of a post-violent event. Yep. And then they've discovered they like it, and then it's enriched their life, and again it becomes an art. And so where I break it up often is you have the people who are utilizing this as a profession of arms. That's your military, that's your law enforcement, it's your personal protection community.
Definitely. Yes.
There's your self-defense community, who is, again, it's limited, but they're not a professional. It's just they're very niche in that regard. Then you have combat sports athletes, and then you have everybody else. And the everybody else is where the art, I find, can grow, and the art itself for people grow. And it's also where you get to have the joy of the art and develop the culture. Not saying the other two don't have culture, but this is where you have that culture of enjoyment.
Yes, and that's where usually our students are in the last part, and the other groups do it maybe more from out of necessity of their job, right? Because they need that to survive, to stay safe, and to protect as a policeman or as a security guard the environment where you are in. So no doubt, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Just our students in German Art Association are usually not really from the first two, and it's the combative people, that's from 15 to 35. You know, that's why the adrenaline is high, and you want to compare yourself, and you want to take the trophy home, right? And when you're 45, you say, no, 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 that's not mine anymore, right? And when you and then you have got the security people, and you have policemen that train once or twice a year, right? So of course there are people that take it very, very, very seriously, and there are people that don't really. And at least in Germany, the police self-defense training is could be improved, especially perhaps for the special forces, but for the ordinary policemen. It was very funny when I had Mikey Nye here. We were walking through our suburb, and we saw a policeman that was walking with a belly and walking the streets, and he said, Dieter, the physical shape of a policeman tells me about the level of crime in the area. I thought, oh, that's funny. So if you've got your strong, your policeman, you say, oh, that's a rather dangerous environment. And if you've got the more easygoing, it's a funny observation, right? But there is reasons for these people to do their thing, and they choose whatever they need to choose as a style, as an art, as a necessity that they do, like, either be it the gun or be it a knife or anti-hand combat. But our clientele tends to be the starting in the self-defense and then doing it because they like it. And I have students, I had one student who made 5th down with 75. And I've, so, I mean, of course, he's been training for a long time. But so we do have quite a lot of older people as well who are not really into, we're at the brink of a fight every evening, We're a bouncer. We go into the bar, disco, and anything can happen anytime. Not anymore. So
Yeah,
many of them.
Oh yeah, it's the fun part about the evolution of a person and their maturity as to where they are in their life. Because, like, I mean, the fact I've hit 40 and I'm not competing in combat sports because I can't because of injuries. I'm no longer in the military on a combat of arms, and also a profession of arms. So I'm in this phase where I get to do it because I like it. It makes me happy. Yeah, there is a fair amount of, like, I'm maintaining skill sets for combative purposes because I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a protector. But the reality of my martial art experience at this point is because I like to. It's something fun to do. And if you're really living in a very, very, very bad environment where you are afraid of getting into fights every day, the best self-defense is moving away. 100%. That's why I don't live in Los Angeles or Texas anymore. That's why I live in a tiny ass town on the end of the Kenai Peninsula here in Alaska, a town of 5,000, where the realistic reasons to carry a firearm up here is because of a bear or more like a moose, not against human contact. Unless you go to Anchorage. That's a whole different story. But anyways.
And let's go where?
Unless I go to Anchorage. Anchorage is our largest metropolitan city, and it's also our most dangerous city here in Alaska. So, So I don't frequent Anchorage all that often.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also the beauty of martial arts. We can provide content for all of these people. Even many styles one style can provide content for these people. And it might be that they keep one style and go through these phases and still stay in this style, just do different things with it. That's fun.
Yeah. In the case of the Filipino community, with the Filipino diaspora, a lot of it is, again, that reconnection of their culture, that reclaiming of culture. And so this leads into like it's a heavier topic, and it's got me in trouble in the past, and will continue to get me in trouble. Is this issue or this commentary of a non-native, non-indigenous Filipino martial arts instructor teaching Filipino martial arts, and better yet, teaching it to Filipinos who honestly they've never been introduced to it in the first place, so they go to the source of information regardless where it comes from. But there is, in a certain sector, there's a bit of resistance toward about, again, non-Filipinos teaching FMA to Filipinos, and that I find is a very wrong and short-sighted and misguided viewpoint. But my question for a lot of non-ethnic Filipino instructors is, have they faced this? What is the challenge particular to it, and how have they moved forward and gotten past that issue?
I never had that.
Oh, okay.
I never had that issue. Especially, I mean, I've got the Datu title. I've been to the Philippines a dozen times, and the people that I'm with are always very respectful and always, no problem with that. If I might go to areas where they, oh, you're Datu, let's maybe, but the Filipinos are a very, very friendly people. They're very friendly people. They are happy if you share their culture with other people. So they embrace you because you embrace them. So and in the end, it's about quality of teaching. And does that mean that a soccer instructor can only be British because it was invented in England, or that the wushu instructor can only be Chinese, right? Or that an American cannot teach karate because he's American and not Japanese. I mean, it's really how much dig you into the art, and how much time you invested in it, and how much skill you got out of it, right? I had that's a long time ago, in the 80s. There was no, 90s. There was this Screamer Digest, and one instructor wrote, every Filipino baby has more knowledge about Filipino martial arts than any Westerner can ever acquire. All right, let this stupidity sink in. And yeah, it's, I mean, racism is wrong anyway, and this is the other way, but it's just so stupid, right? If you dig into a topic and put time and effort into it, you develop skills, no matter what nationality you're in. And I do give it that I've seen Filipinos that seem to move naturally quite good. And there are other people that I'd call them sometimes a pregnant broomstick. Very, very stiff movement. But that has nothing to do with knowledge. This has to do with grace in the movement. And that doesn't mean that, let's say, if you are, the Latino is a natural good dancer, that an North American or a Scandinavian cannot learn this skill. Maybe it takes longer because perhaps he doesn't have this intuitive rhythm in him, but it doesn't mean that he can't learn it. So we have dancing instructors. So we sometimes do some tango argentino, right? And we have a German tango instructor who also goes to Argentina to learn there, right? But can't he teach tango because he's not from Argentina? No. It's yeah. I think it's a stupid argument, and people who
I agree. And I bring this topic up because, again, this podcast helps me with my research for social anthropology for my degree, because it is a question within the Filipino American community, Filipino Canadian community. I call it the FIDM, the Filipino Diaspora Indigenous Decolonization Movement. It's a long acronym. It's a real pain in the butt to deal with. But there's a lot of Filipinos who are disconnected from their indigenous community and disconnected from their indigenous culture. And it's often being very young, and a lot of Filipino in that community go through that phase of resentment, misguided anger, and just all of that. And I too went through it because I'm an adoptee raised in America by white Americans. So there's that disconnect. So I bring this up because it's a phase in life that a lot of people go through, and trying to find positive ways to get past that and get past that resentment, get past the misguided anger, and be grateful for one, that these knowledge keepers, these institutions of information still exist, because the greater travesty is that it could have disappeared entirely. So regardless of the source, if the source is credible, respectful, and is able to teach this freely, willingly, that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, again, I bring this up because it is a topic that gets brought up in my research in general. So yeah,
it's a matter that many nations, and say nations, have that problem. If Germans emigrate to another country, it's quite normal that the kids don't speak German anymore, because they want to integrate, fit in so well, and sort of let go their country. That doesn't really happen with Chinese, or here with Turkish people, for example, right? Um, and I don't know about lots about others, but if you really go into another country, you want to settle in and you want to be accepted there. So you try to, I think at least, embrace the culture, and try not to be different. And that means that maybe a lot of your culture is not really practiced anymore. And especially if that was done by your grandparents, and your parents only did it because they're so busy that they don't really have any interest in it. So, so then you're second generation or third generation, you haven't got a clue. Yeah. And that's not only in martial arts or with Filipinos.
And what I find with a lot of immigrants, it tends to be that third, fourth generation that has this drive for cultural revitalization and reclamation, because
where are my roots?
Yeah, where are my roots? They're upset and angry as to, I am of this ethnicity, I have this rich history, but why didn't you teach me all this? Because of the sake of integration. And like point case about German immigrants, my wife's family, 5 generations immigrated to the States in 1860 with that mass German migration. My adoptive parents on my mom's side, same situation, and a little bit of my adoptive dad's side because they're German Irish. But again, 5 generations later, they may be ethnically German a little bit, but reality is, like, when did they stop being German? And better yet, when can they go back and embrace and learn about the culture? Because I look at my own children, as much as this podcast talks about like reclamation and reclaiming of Filipino indigenous culture and whatnot, I also have to be respectful to my children, because they're half, as to the German side. What if they want to embrace their German ancestry, and what are the ways that can facilitate that, embrace it, encourage it? And that is a question that gets brought up for a lot of Americans that come from Europe, but don't have those ethnic ties, those cultural ties, because it has been in practice in 5 generations.
Yeah, and especially countries, and America is one of it, but there are France, Spain, and Russia, and many other countries that have a very high pride in their in their ethnic, or in their being American, being Spanish, or something like that. Then you might have 3 or 4 generations back, we were from somebody else, but this, I'm an American, I'm a Spanish now, right? You go back and there might be your family roots a few generations back, but it's got nothing to do with you anymore. Yeah. Interesting, sure, but it's more a museum. Oh, that's where we came from. All right, let's go home.
Yeah, again, the balance between preservation, living in the current, and then innovation, or creating something new and beautiful and unique. So, and again, this is where like the phases of Filipino martial arts with each generation, especially tying back to GM Remy with his start and his influence from there and moving forward. It is really curious to see where FMA is going, because one of the questions that got brought up by a mutual friend of ours, Cameron, is to what would you think, or what is it again? Where did he say this? what would have FMA looked like, or Modern Arnis looked like, if GM Remy had lived another 20 years? I mean, that's speculative, but like, what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely not the way he did Modern Arnis when he died. He would have evolved. He would have changed. He would have innovated, um, and uh, um, and what would have Einstein done if he would have lived another 20 years? We don't know. They were geniuses in their respect and their right, um, and it would be different. It would be different. And I have not the fantasy to imagine um, what he might have. Look, Remy had the ability to see something that he liked and incorporate it into a system seamlessly. Something like Kelly does as well, right? Um, and so who knows whom he might have met? He was heavily influenced by Wally J, not so much by George Dillman, who he made the big three seminars, Wally J, George Dillman, and Remy Presas. Funny thing, one student once asked him, well, Professor, why don't you do the knockouts? I said, well, I know how to knock out, but I don't know how to revive. So, and I'm quite happy that he wasn't into this knockout thing. But maybe if he would have taught that, I would have embraced it. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So maybe he would have gone Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because he liked what the Gracie does. Maybe he would have done more gun stuff because he saw Krav Maga guys. Whoa, great stuff what they do. Maybe the Krav Maga guys stole something from him or learned something from him. You never know. So
They absolutely did. I'm just going to be clear. They absolutely did, because I have a Krav Maga background. So yes.
Yes, and what's Krav Maga? Let's go a little bit in that direction. What's Krav Maga made for? Krav Maga is made for people combat ready in 3 months.
Yes,
that's what it was designed for. It was not designed for street or for everyday people, and they incorporate fitness now. Now that's nothing really got to do with it. So, what is tradition? Not important. What is functional? What works? What makes me being able to apply this techniques, whatever stuff, in 2 or 3 weeks, 3 months, in a gross motor skill that is stress resistant. That's what Krav Maga originally was made for, right? And that they maybe had a look around. What is functional? What is working? And I'm very, very sure the Krav Maga of the 80s is different than the Krav Maga that is taught in Germany and in the States today, right? Again, demand. Do they have to be ready in 3 months to fight to go into house fight in Gaza or over? No, we don't have to do that in Dortmund or in wherever, right? So the purpose of it changes also. So the content usually changes. So that's why a system like Krav Maga has no reason to look for tradition, because that was never part of it.
The phrase that I always taught when I was going through my certification, mind you, it was a 2-week certification because it was a military certification, was the idea of we fight tonight. So there wasn't depth. It was immediacy, as it is with any military combative program, is you have to be able to fight immediately with it. And the culture of the tradition isn't a priority. Now,
well, you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 techniques that you really drill, that you make really work. That's the elbow, the knee, the headbutt, or whatever, right? That really is the core of functional close quarter fighting. And you drill that, and the everything else is not really important.
Yep. So again, it's phases, like we've talked before, the phases and reasons why. And again, sustainability. And this is where the evolution of Krav Maga has been, especially in the past 20 years, has turned away from the we fight tonight combative. I mean, seeing certain cases, and we see this specifically in the U.S. as Krav Maga has moved from the we fight tonight to let's mix it with CrossFit because we want to feel good, look good, and
be fit.
Yeah.
I mean, Brand Frank has a little similar approach with his knife. Learn in 6 and teach in 12. Right, learn in 6 hours and teach in 12 hours. You know, so you've got very limited stuff that you teach, and that's what you do, and that you try to go into your gross motor skills. And once you've got it, hand it on. Yeah. And he's quite serious about that. I mean, he was once, he just once said, "Oh, what you do in your tappy with the tying and the locking, and so that's really great." And one of my students said, "You can do that." No, he said, "I can't." Yes, you just learned it. You can do it. And he said, "No, I can't because I trained myself to be a blade man, and if I go for the stick, then my reflexes, my concepts change. So I can't do that because it goes against what I do in my blade." Yeah. And that's a very consequent approach.
It's very much the tool informs the technique. Yes.
Yeah.
So I've heard several stories as to the reasons why GM Remy did not teach knife. From your perspective as one of his originals, can you speak to that? Because I'm always curious everybody's spin on it.
He did not teach a lot of knife, no. And as I said before, he wanted to get away from this cruel and brutal image. You will never see any pictures of him where he has a knife to the throat of his opponent, or he's always this trapping position, right? That he's doing and striking, and but he's never going for the kill move or so, because he wanted to have an image. Because there's a funny story. He made a lot of fights in the Philippines. And there was a lot of blood and broken bones, and he earned money through these fights. And it was not show fights, not stage fights. They were betting on each other, and whoever won got the money, and this kind of thing. Yeah. And one reporter once said, and what's the essence of your fights? And he wanted one of those blood and broken bone stories, and said, yes, we were fighting, and we did really cool stuff. And then was thinking to myself, yes, why are we hurting each other so much? We should be helping each other much more. And that's sort of the turn of his system from a dual style system that he made his things work. He started to learn the more cutting, slashing things from his father and grandfather. Then he went to Balintag, where he had the stick in the short range, so he could fight the Balintag people with his lago and stuff. And he was a lefty, that helped. And he could fight then the other people with his other skills. So he was very, very successful, and he must have been a fierce, very effective fighter. But then he said, this is not the right way. I don't want my style to be associated with this cruelty, this brutality. And knife fight as such, as fun it is in training sometimes. If you see karambit stuff, 90% of what I see is empty hand against karambit. So you learn how to shish kebab somebody without a weapon when you have a karambit. Lots of fun, but when you think about what you're doing, you go, whoa, right? And he didn't want to have that image. That's why he sometimes did knife defense, but I don't recall any knife to knife that he really did. And I attribute it to that.
Yep, it's a beautiful reason why. And one of the things that it's been brought up to my attention, just my experiences, especially dealing with wartime veterans, especially with 20 years of the GWAT, is there's a connecting theme of men and women of incredible valor and courage who've seen and dealt a lot of violence and a lot of combat tend to have the opportunity to have an incredible amount of compassion and empathy because they've seen the far extreme of what humans can do to other humans. And then they come back around as to the reasons why they do these things, learn these things, is based upon love, for the love of protecting those whom we love and and care for. But ultimately, if we want to grow, move forward, we have to get beyond just that simple or that initial phase of violence for violence sake, and develop the love of the art, develop the love as to the reasons why we do the things. And again, that changing of the stereotype, the changing of the perspective is again where you have longevity. And again, getting away from the cult of the knife, the cult of violence, cult of death. And I believe in the power of that, because the cult of knife, cult of death is such a small community. It's such a small, I hate to say, a small-minded community, because it's very dark, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with somebody who's seen a lot of violence and dealt a lot of violence and breaking away from that, that's incredibly brave. It's courageous. It's innovative. And on top of all that, you can see the impact of what it's done with martial arts throughout the world, especially 30 years later.
Mm-hmm. And no doubt that it's fun doing that, right? That's really nice, but you are really disconnected from the reality of what you're doing. You know, that you cut the veins, that you cut the throat, and you go in, you slice there, and it's a bloody mess what you're producing. But you have aluminum knives, and you're just playing, and it's enjoyable. It's fun. But once you've seen this stuff in reality, I think your aim is that this shall not happen. And that's why he wanted to, or Remy wanted to, put more the educational part of it. We train each other, we have responsibility, character building, a little bit, adapting the Japanese stuff from it to give it more seriosity, a better image in the Philippines. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in America, that wasn't really necessary that much anymore, because martial arts in America had this we build character, and we are strong, and we have the will, and so martial arts in America had this positive image that in the Philippines at that time wasn't there. So he didn't have that mission when he was in America. I think all speculation, right? We didn't look into his head.
Yeah, it's Cameron's bringing it up. That is more necessary now to have that more positive image, that the reasons why being a place of love, beauty, art, and longevity versus just combat, especially when we're healing from 20 years of combat, particular to this generation of dealing with all the violence of the GWOT and continuous. So finding that dichotomy of the artist versus the warrior, like we have to go in phases. And
And ultimately, if you're teaching self-defense and martial arts, you teach them never to use it. That's the ultimate goal. I think it's not that you go. I mean, if you go into a rock in a bar where you know that there are Hell's Angels, you put some milk in the beer of the guy. You have got your training. You've got your practice. I mean, that's easy, But that's not really why you teach the people. But it's more to keep them away from fighting and from being potentially injured. And that's I think what martial arts. And that's why the beauty of the art is coming in then, and the responsibility you have is kicking in. It's.
We're dealing with some lag here. I don't know if your phone is dying, but what I've gathered, again, combat is such a limited time period as to when a person can be part of it. Combat sports just the same. There's an expiration date, there's a timestamp, wear and tear on the body, and especially if you've been doing it for the majority of your life. At a certain point, you just have to stop, or not just stop, but adjust and move and do something different, especially for your mental health standpoint. Because if you stay constantly in the kill, because I mean, we talk about programming in the military, is we're very programmed to kill the enemy, dehumanize the enemy, but that does things to you, obviously, both psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. And so with that, you got to break out of that phase. In the case of that of martial arts, if we're just constantly on the kill, we lose the cultural aspect, or let alone we never have the opportunity to have the cultural aspect to develop. So with that, I mean, the art within your art is a beautiful thing that GM Remy coined in my mind, and it's created such an opportunity for people to grow and express themselves, and especially evolve beyond just as like GM Remy did, evolve just beyond the violence for violence sake. Again, the reasons why are necessary. But yeah, Cameron saying we lose the force continuum as well. But I wonder if DatuDieter's phone took a crap on him. That occasionally happens on this. But oh well, we'll see if he'll come back in. Anyways, while we are hanging out, I have a couple other things to work on to put out there, just for points of business here. Let us, again, Datu Kelly Wardens, Water and Steel, open registration here on the 15th of August, no longer on Labor Day weekend. Labor Day weekend. But yeah, 15th through the 17th. Also, GM Bobby, this is his website. He's got World Camp coming up here in November. I'll be there. And also he's got a bunch of stuff coming up here as well. He's going to be down in Marysville, Washington here in August. Unfortunately, I'm missing that one this year because I'm going World Camp. But there's open registration for that, and he's always got something going on. But again, here's his website for that. As well, DatuDieter, here's his YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to that, as I'm doing that right now. If you haven't done it, go for it. As well, here is his website. Give that a look. And of course, his Instagram page. I need to find his Facebook page, but again, here's his Instagram. Give him a like and subscribe. Also, for the audience, if you have anybody in mind that you would like to have on the show, or if you like to be on the show, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And yeah, part of this podcast, aside from what it does for my degree as a point of data collection and just overall research, it is an opportunity for me to chronicleize what people are doing and what they have done. So again, telling the stories of people within FMA, let alone just beyond what their Grandmaster did, but curious as to what they do today, the current practitioner, and also their goals for what they're doing moving forward. So yeah, anyways, I think we're just gonna end this podcast because it sounds like DatuDieter is having issues with his phone, and I'll bring him on later once again, because I mean, he's a fascinating individual, and we're in a great spot in this conversation. However, I mean, technology does what it does. So in the meantime, we're just gonna end it, and everybody have a good day. And yeah, thanks for hanging out. A little bit messier today, but it's all good. Anyways, let me say goodbye. Bye, everybody.